Say that already.
Hey, this is Sports Slaw with Lomas Brown, the pro.
And Deb Schneider, I'm the prof. And together, we're the pro and the prof.
Hey, good morning, Lomas.
Hey, good morning, Deb. Yeah, it is the morning, bright and early in the morning, huh?
It is. It is. And we're doing a special broadcast today for 9/11, 20th anniversary of 9/11. Just want to commemorate and talk about what happened, where we are now, and the personal stories. On 9/11, almost 3,000 people died at the time of the attacks on the World Trade Center, the attacks on the Pentagon, the planes going down, the people in the World Trade Center. That's the big one that we all think about. But there was also the Pentagon. There was also the other plane that went down. It is a lot of times, we think about the fact that this happened 20 years ago, that it was over. It's not over. People are still dying from the effects, from the asbestos, from, the first responders. There's a generation of kids, they're 20 to 25 who really never knew their parents. Some of whom were born after their parents passed away in this tragedy.
Yeah. I think the thing for me, Deb, that kind of resonates now, especially with what we've been going through with the pandemic, is that everyone knew where they were when those attacks happened. It's just like, with this coronavirus, people gonna have stories to tell about that. And, with 911, everybody knew where they were. Everybody, the world stopped. The world wasn't the same after that, and you're right. It's just something that's tragic. It's something that's still affecting people. And even people that weren't directly affected, that lost loved ones, they still talk about it. I've been watching a number of programs that's been recalling and recanting what happened those days. And you could still see the pain on a lot of people's faces that either lost somebody or knew somebody that was affected by the attacks in 911. So, yeah, it's a solemn day in U.S. history. And like I say, everybody knows where they were when that happened.
Absolutely. And a big thing about it is that because everybody knew where they were, so many 9/11 stories are really personal stories.
Yeah. Yes.
And it's, we see what happened. We see these first responders. We look at New York City. But you and I both have very personal stories and very different stories.
Yeah, that is. Yeah. And it kind of fits in with sports law. Me looking at it from the professional side, the sports side of it. And of course, you from the sports side, but also, from the law side of, what went on and some of the decisions that you guys had to make. And, again,
right.
I just know for me, and, I'll jump into it, Deb, is, we had just finished playing the Denver Broncos on Monday Night TV. I was with the New York Giants, and we flew into Newark, flew all night long, and we estimated that we arrived in Newark probably a little before 7 a.m. that morning. And, from all recounts and everything that was heard, we were actually a couple of terminals over from where the terrorists were, because it was a United flight that those guys took.
Right.
So we were just a couple of terminals over. Again, us, we never had to go through the terminals because they normally bring the buses up to the planes. We depart the planes and we just leave from the tarmac and go directly back to the facility to leave. So we did that. And Deb, I just remember my regular routine. You're so wound up after a game. I don't care how long ago you played that game. Your emotions are so wound up. It takes you a while to just kind of bring yourself down. And I remember in my hotel room, me and a couple of guys went back to my hotel room. I stayed in the hotel that whole year. We went back in the hotel room and, we were just watching Sports Center. We had it on ESPN. And I remember when those guys left my room, I just decided to put it on. I can't remember what channel, but it was one of the regular channels that I put it on. And one of the planes had already went into the first tower. And when the newscasters were talking about it, they were just saying, we think it's a small commuter plane. They really didn't know a lot. They were just kind of guesstimating what was going on and everything. So I remember I went, opened my curtains, and I could see it. I could see the towers. I could kind of see the little smoke coming out because I was in Secaucus, right across the river from there. Kind of see the smoke coming out. So I'm like, wow. So I remember going in the bathroom, and by the time I came out the bathroom, the second plane had hit the other tower. And then I was like, wow. And then, and from that point on, Deb, I had the TV on listening to the news, but I had my window open and I just watched it. And I stood there the rest of the time until those towers came down. And once they came down, of course, the debris was so much debris that you could no longer see the city skyline. I mean, it just wiped out the whole city skyline because it was so much debris that had came down. And Deb, it was just so eerie. It was just so surreal what we were going through, at that point. And not me personally, but just thinking about the people, the first responders, everybody that was involved in trying to rescue people and trying to get people out of those buildings, just what they were going through, and at that point, I didn't know how this would impact things. I had no idea how we would be impacted from that point on. But I just remember those towers, or at least the one tower, crumbling. And like I say, you couldn't see anything from that point on. So, it was just that. And, I'll let you jump in, but, it's just other things that happened that just kind of really resonated with me on that day. And the last thing I'll say right now about that, Deb, it was a beautiful, beautiful day. Before those, I mean, it was picture perfect day. It was clear. It was sunny. It was one of the most beautiful days that I can remember. And I remember that because of how beautiful the day was and how tragic it ended.
Wow. So you actually saw the towers come down.
Yes, I seen the one come down, the first tower come down. And like I say, once that came down, it was so much debris and dust, and you couldn't see the city skyline. So, I'd seen the other tower come down from TV when they were showing it on TV, but I couldn't visually see it because of like all the debris and everything. And, it was just, it was just tragic, just the sounds, the sights of being around there or being that close to such a tragic event.
Wow. And again, like I say, these stories are so personal. I was working with championship auto racing teams, and I was the chief legal officer there. We were in Germany when this happened. Mm-hmm. So we weren't even stateside, and we had gotten there the night before. So we flew out, we got there on the 10th of September. And I had my kids with me. We were walking around Heidelberg and found a department store where, we went in because we had the kids were looking for school supplies. They're like, 6 and 9. And there was a TV on. And I turned to my husband. I said, and we saw the towers go down. And we looked and we said, we didn't know they were imploding the World Trade Center. Of course, this is all in German. And there's crowds around, and they go up, turn on BBC. And at that point, just the it was like a curtain. You just saw this. Everybody's, oh, you're American. You're American. Push you to the front. Watch this. And just the terror, like, what's happening? I'm in a foreign country. I don't know what's happening. I don't know where to go. And then the Pentagon and, so you're seeing all this on the news. We immediately went back to the hotel and spent the rest of the night actually watching TV and trying to figure out what was happening. Meanwhile, but I was over in Germany because Championship Auto Racing Team's kart was putting on a race in Lausitzring in Dresden. And we didn't know. We had gotten most everybody over. They had already flown over before the plane stopped. Remember, the other thing with this is all air traffic stopped.
Yes.
Immediately.
Yes.
So we were missing Michael Andretti, Roger Penske, and Father Phil. They were in the States. Everybody else was over in Germany already or overseas. We were the largest contingency of Americans off U.S. soil, which at that point, it's hard to imagine now, but nobody knew, are we attacking all Americans? Here's this basically unprotected group of, 3,000 people who are going to put on a race. And then the big question was, do we run the race or not?
Mm-hmm.
What do we do? And we had meetings after meetings to try to determine if we're going to run the race. The security at the track immediately changed. Immediately, the gates, the security personnel, doubled, tripled. There were, in all the hotels, there were these books, these condolence books that everybody was writing in. The Germans, everybody was there, and everyone was scared. Everyone was scared for us.
Mm.
And then,
no, that's interesting, because I know how we reacted back here as Americans. I was going to ask you, and that's a great. I just want to know how in a foreign country, how did they react? How was it? How was the reaction of the people over there, non-Americans?
I can't tell you how many times I was stopped and people said, "I'm so sorry."
Mm.
Like I said, the security, these condolence books, large condolence books written. There's actually a painting on my wall or a drawing that the president of Lausitzring, where we were running the race, drew this, and it was kart, and it was the U.S. and Germany and everybody getting together to push up the flag, like that Iwo Jima, that famous Iwo Jima picture.
Mm-hmm.
And we were all working together to put on this race. So there we are. And it was surreal. It really was.
Yeah.
It just being over there. And then we decided, we talked with the mayor of the state of Brandenburg. We talked with Paul Tagliabue, who was the commissioner of the NFL at that time. Were we going to run the race? Were we not going to run the race? We had some people who were fairly directly impacted. Some of our sponsors, they didn't want us to run the race. It was a very back and forth. Are we going to run? And ultimately, we decided that the terrorists would not win. Mm-hmm. And I believe we were the first sporting event, which was on 9/15, that we were going to run this race in Lausitzring. We ran the race, and unfortunately, it was an incredibly tragic race, because this was the race where Alex Zanardi was T-boned coming out of the pits and lost his legs.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So
we have 9/11 happening. We have at the end of this race, and I remember I was there. We're all shell shocked. We're watching the race. Zanardi came in. He pitted. He came out of the pits, hit the grass, spun around, and a car T-boned him. And body parts, the car, just awful tragedy. we were lucky enough that we had our safety team there, and one of the members of the safety team, took off his belt and tourniquet, and then we airlifted Zanardi to Berlin. And I was dealing with Sports Illustrated. You can't show this. So we have 9/11 happening. We have this horrible, horrible tragedy with one of, our top racers. And, Zanardi went on and he's done a lot of racing without his legs. And then was just in a tragic accident, a bike accident where he was hit. So again, that our song, we keep saying our family song is "Wake Me Up When September Ends," because like I said, I had my kids there with me. Yeah. And the other very personal thing to me was that night after the Trade Center went down and everything, that night we found out that my father-in-law was going into hospice. So we were trying to get back to the States.
Right.
We couldn't.
Right. Wow. Yeah. I mean, again, when you say that about air traffic, it kind of brings me back to because if anyone knows where Giant Stadium is, it's in East Rutherford. And of course, Teterboro Airport is on one side. You got Newark Airport. And I'm telling you, Deb, every day before 911, you couldn't go 5 minutes without hearing a plane, either a commercial plane or a private plane. You would hear it. And once 911 happened, it was so eerily silent. I mean, like you said, no air transportation going on. So it was so eerie when I say the sounds. And the other thing that I'll never forget is the smell. It was horrific, the smell that was coming from there. And, I guess you have to contribute it to, bodies and, building and iron and all that different stuff smoldering. But it was the most distinct and the most horrible smell I've ever smelt in my life. And again, the thing for us, and when I say us, the New York Giants and the Jets is, everybody else, and I'm just speaking in terms of the other teams, they could practice and they could do whatever they had to do. They weren't in the city. We were there. We had to relive it every day. Every day you're hearing about it on the news. Anytime you talk to someone, they either knew somebody that knew somebody that knew somebody that was affected by this. You couldn't walk down the street of New York and talk to anyone without them being affected by this, by the event that happened. And the other thing that I remember is probably about 3 days. There's two other things. 3 days afterwards, we hosted kids of parents that had tragically been killed in the towers. And I just remember them prepping us before they came to the field, before they came to practice, and they prepped us on what not to say. It was certain trigger words that we had to stay away from, certain things that they did not want us to say because it would bring up bad memories for these kids, or it could trigger an effect on these kids. And that was something. So we hosted the kids. And the last thing I'll say is that we didn't want to play. You guys talked about, and that's the reason we were so against playing. We were so mad at the commissioner because he waited until we didn't find out, I think, until Thursday night, whether we were going to play or not that weekend. And we were dead set against it. We were talking about calling the union. We were talking about possibly striking that game. We were so upset with him because they didn't call that game earlier. Like I say, they contemplated having that game, and we weren't ready to play. It's no way that fit emotionally that we would have been able to play a decent game that week. So finally, I think Thursday night, maybe Friday morning, the commissioner came in and said that the games would be canceled that weekend. It was a relief. But like I say, we were so upset at him because we felt that decision should have been made earlier in the week. So, just some of the things that kind of went on with us, just trying to get emotionally trying to get through the circumstances and what was going on.
One of the things I have to say is that our CEO, Joe Heitzler, Paul Tagliabue, your commissioner, they made some very, very difficult decisions. Yes. They really did, and they were slightly different positions, but they definitely just standing up to this was incredible. I mean, the decisions that had to be made on a dime, it was extremely controversial because everybody was affected. Yeah. Everybody in the United States, everybody in the world was really affected by this. We have our interns, LeVar and Hunter, who are waiting in the wings to come on and ask us a few questions and maybe give us a little bit about their stories too.
So 9/11, I didn't have school that day. I was around campus to play basketball, and half of my college, half of the football team and basketball team, they were from New York. And when I was coming off the basketball court playing pickup with my friends, I seen all these people gathered around the TV, and I knew something was wrong because there was no laughter. Nobody was talking about class. It was just a dead silence in the hallway. And when I looked up and I seen the tower on fire, and the reporter, I don't know if it was Peter Jennings, but just remembering saying, I never thought I would see a day like this happen. And then people started dispersing. People were like, I got to get to my dorm room and call my family. I got to make sure my dad is alive, or my mom works in New York. And walking across campus, they got on the loudspeaker and they were like, classes for the rest of the week are down. There's no more school for the rest of the week. Prayers up to your family. And on the loudspeaker just repeated like every 5 minutes, there are no more classes for the rest of the week. So I'm driving home from Norfolk to Hampton. It's about a good 20-minute drive. And in Hampton, Virginia, we have Fort Eustis. We have Norfolk Naval Station, which is across the water, which is where I was at. And then you have Langley Air Force Base. I have to pass Langley Air Force Base to get to my house. And there are 3 gates in the Langley Air Force Base. And my 41 years of living, I've never seen the line that long to get into Langley Air Force Base. It was the longest line I have ever seen. And that's when it hit me watching it. But to see all of those cars, all of these people in uniform, and I'm at a stoplight, and I remember this one guy, he was just like, I can't wait I could hear him. I'm at the stoplight, and he was, I can't wait to get overseas. We got some business to handle. But yeah, that's when it got real to me, because I couldn't believe what I was watching on the TV. But to be at a light and see all of these people in uniform waiting to get on base, that's when I was like, oh my God, like it's about to be crazy. And going home, all of my family, thankfully, was in Maryland. But that's all we were saying was, prayers up for the family out there, because of this event. It's just changed their lives forever. Then you see the firemen and the first responders on TV, they're going into a situation with a heavy heart, but at the same time, they have a very important job to do. They're pulling people out of that building that are alive. They don't know the body count. They don't know how much smoke they're going to intake. And that had hit me then, because I was like, you're putting your life on the line. That's your job. But at the same time, none of them were prepared for this. You know, they train you on incidents. And I know this from, you know, being in the military myself. You get trained on how to handle a terrorist incident. But to that point, we had never had anything of that magnitude. So to say they were unprepared, I'm not saying they weren't unprepared to pull bodies out or they weren't unprepared to save lives, but the magnitude of looking at that tower being down, and then you're also hearing about the Pentagon getting hit in other areas of the world that were affected, that's going to hit home. You're going into your job with a heavy heart. So that's what made me love the first responders that much more that day in that moment, because no one was prepared for that. And yet they had to go in blind. And that's what they did. They went in blind, hoping for the best.
Right. And they rushed in. They
Yeah.
rushed in. A number of first responders lost their lives as the towers came down.
Yes.
I think that's a big piece of this. And then, you know, but all of us, like I said, it's personal stories. So many of these are personal stories. Everybody was affected. Hunter, I think you were possibly too young to know some of the repercussions.
Yeah, I was only 2 years old at the time, so obviously I don't have a personal memory about it. My main thing that I was always told growing up, because my dad's a pilot, so I always heard about how different just flying and travel was, like before and after, and how that experience just exponentially changed versus, you know, the TSA procedures and everything we kind of know we're kind of used to now. It was not at all the same before that. So that's just really interesting to see for me. But yeah, I don't really have a personal experience with this, and it's really, really interesting to just hear how all you guys were affected and how personal you guys, like, especially Lomas, just playing for the Giants, like a team in the city. That's just that's crazy.
Yeah, and Hunter, it was, and you know, like I said, we paid tribute to the fire department, to the NYPD. We would have them out at practices. They would be at the games. Almost every game that year, you know, that was a home game. We started with a tribute to a certain department or certain individuals that went there. And the other thing too, Hunter, that I remember is that a few days later, they were allowing us, the players, they wanted us to go over and to the site. You were able to go over to the site and help out, pass out water, encourage the guys, shake hands, and do different things like that. Just kind of keep the morale up of the first responders and the people that were going through the rubble. And I couldn't go, Hunter. I couldn't go over there. I declined. You know, I was one of the players that didn't go. It was so emotional and so personal to me. I couldn't do it. We had a number of players, Tiki Barber and Michael Strahan and, you know, Kerry Collins. A lot of those guys, they went. A lot of my teammates went, but I couldn't go. It was just, I was just that emotional about what went on. And, you know, again, you know, it was just, it was just painstaking just to see what was going on and to know that certain people were still alive in there days afterwards. There was people that they were trying to get to that they couldn't get to. So, you know, it was just surreal. And the other thing, Ray went to that picture where people were jumping. My roommate, Kerry Jenkins, he stayed about 5 blocks away from the World Trade Center in an apartment building. And he told me that him and his girlfriend went up on the roof of their building and they sat there and they could see people actually hanging out the windows and they seen people jumping. And he told me what the sound that he heard was just people, you know, the impact of people hitting the ground or hitting cars. And he said that's the thing that really resonated with him as something that would stick with him the rest of his life. And so it's just, it was just a bad situation. And and I kind of understood why the NFL wanted us to play, because they wanted us to be a distraction for people. They thought that sports would be a distraction. They wanted us to try to get back to normal, but we couldn't play. It just emotionally, I know I couldn't. I was an emotional wreck. And it didn't even happen to me. I didn't lose anybody, but I was still, because I was tied in with the city of New York, and you knew the city was suffering. It was just bad. And I'm thinking about it now, and you just, it just kind of gets to you too, thinking about it.
One of the things I think nobody knew what to do. That was a big thing. We were all very, very emotional, and we were trying to, some people, I mean, the country was definitely coming together. The country came together immediately.
Yes.
There really weren't politics in this one.
Yes.
And it wasn't it was just the country comes together. We have a common enemy. We've got to take care of this. But nobody really knew what to do. Nobody knew, can we fly? How do we get home? What do we do here? Should we have sports? Shouldn't we have sports? And there were a lot of conversations going back and forth. Do we get back to normal? Do we not get back to normal? And as we've talked about a lot with COVID and the pandemic this year, sports becomes something that, again, brings people together.
Mm-hmm.
And sports becomes a bit of a distraction and getting back to normal.
Yes.
And I think one of the things I'm looking at when I look at this, and I look at Lomas and I think about it myself, it's 20 years later and we're still very, very affected, almost in tears.
Yeah.
It's such an emotional thing to have seen that, to have been part of it in whatever way we were part of it.
Yeah. I don't know when the trade centers were built, but they were landmarks. They were landmarks. It's like they say, like they attacked the heart of America. And I think that's why it resonates with everyone, because, you look at the Twin Towers and they like two strong, you know what I'm saying? It just kind of represents America being strong and just the stability of America. And for those that come down, be attacked and to come down, it's almost kind of like a shot in the gut. And I think that was the thing. Deb, I remember the year, because I played for the Giants for 2 years, and I had a picture, an old picture when I was in New York with the trade centers in the background. I've been there before.
I'm sure you were there.
Yeah, I had to do an event on the 70-something floor. They had a restaurant there. I had to do an event there for the Giants a year earlier. So again, I had been in that building before. So it just so many things that kind of go through your mind when you think about that. And you're right, America came together. They came together like no one like nothing I had ever witnessed before. I remember once we got back to playing, our next game, we had to go to Kansas City to play the Chiefs. And I remember when we came out the tunnel, those people in Kansas City, you would have thought we were the home team. I mean, they stood up and they cheered for us like we were the home team and we were the opposing team coming there. But like you said, everybody, America just came together and they were just happy. They were just pulling for us because we were the team from New York. We ended up beating Kansas City that day. And again, when we left the field, they gave us a standing ovation as we left the field. So just so many things that, now that we reflect back, that I reflect back to, that I remember about those events, about that week, about what happened.
Right. And so many changes, so many, TSA, Hunter, you say your father's a pilot. I remember prior to that time running to the gate to meet people or dropping them off at the gate. None of this TSA, and then trying to get on a plane back to the States was one of those very difficult things. I had 2 small kids, and they said you can't take anything on the plane because they were scared. What, are we taking bombs? And I'm looking at my kids. I go, you want me to be on a plane with 9 hours with a 6-year-old and nothing? I need a crayon. I need a crayon.
Yes. Yeah, that changed travel for us too, pro teams.
Yep.
I told you, we used to leave from the tarmac. We had to start going through the terminals. It was no more of that, after 911. We had to do just like regular people did. Just go through the terminal. And yeah, it changed all the rules for travel, even for pro teams too.
And it went up immediately.
Yeah.
Absolutely immediately.
So I want to show you guys something real fast. I don't know, and Ray, I probably can't see it good, but this is the picture from, and I know it's not a good picture, but this is us in the locker room after the game against Kansas City, 911. Our head coach took a picture of the whole team, and they wanted all us to get together, to commemorate what happened, Coach Jim Fossil. And that's from after that game. And you see everybody's wearing the caps, the FDNY caps and the NYPD caps, because, again, that was after we beat Kansas City. And I have that picture on my phone. It's one of the pictures that I'll always have. And it memorializes us after that game during the 911 time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's amazing. And I have the picture up on my wall of, from Lausett's Ring, of all of us coming together. You just never forget it.
Yes.
Never forget it. And Ray, our producer, has a tribute that he had put together for WWJ, I believe, back in 2001. And I think we'll end with that.
Dozens of events run Metro Detroit today, marking the 8th anniversary of the 9/11 attacks on America.
We just had a plane crash into Level 4 of the World Trade Center.
Then we heard a big bang on the side of the building, and there was smoke everywhere. People were jumping out the windows.
Today, our fellow citizens, our way of life, our very freedom came under attack in a series of deliberate and deadly terrorist acts.
The president and volunteer groups are asking for people to volunteer today. I think that's the greatest way of demonstrating that we are united as a nation.
My uncle, firefighter Matthew Barnes. Pennsylvania's not the same without you. The family's not the same without you. We love you and miss you deeply.
8 Septembers have come and gone. Nearly 3,000 days have passed, almost one for each of those taken from us. But no turning of the seasons can diminish the pain and the loss of that day.
I can hear you, the rest of the world hears you, and the people who knocked these buildings down will hear all of us
soon. Eric L. Bennett.
Oliver Duncan Bennett.
Margaret I. Benson.
Dominic J. Berardi.
James Patrick Ray.
Stephen
Wow.
Yeah, that's deep.
Very deep.
Yeah, that's deep. Yeah, and just to wrap it up, on that picture I was showing you guys, it said, "In memory of those who lost their lives, and in honor of those who made us proud." New York Giants 13, Kansas City Chiefs 3, September 23rd, 2001, Kansas City, Missouri.
Wow. Well, I think this will wrap up our tribute episode. Thank you. Thank you to our listeners. Thank you, Lomas, for your very, very personal stories, and LeVar for your very personal story, and Hunter for your viewpoint on how things have changed. And I hope our listeners will check us out on Spotify, on SoundCloud, ask us questions, and we look forward to the next episode. Thank you all.
Thanks.